It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, warnings from health leaders ahead of a weekend of NHS walkouts. Resident doctors will strike tomorrow in a dispute over pay and conditions. The health service says the industrial action will harm patients. Coming up tonight, we'll speak to a resident doctor about why they believe the walkouts are necessary. Also ahead, we'll be live in Epping as the row over a migrant hotel there rumbles on, with police preparing for more protests. Plus, I speak to the parents of Kyra Hill, who drowned at a water park 2 years ago. They're calling for a massive overhaul of health and safety regulations to ensure what happened to Kyra never happens again. And the head of the FA tells Sky News his organisation is considering a social media boycott after racial abuse was directed at Lioness Jess Carter. We'll have the latest for you live from Zurich. Well, that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, that's come throughout the course of the programme, but first we start with breaking news and Sir Keir Starmer saying that he will hold an emergency call with the leaders of France and Germany tomorrow to discuss the war in Gaza, saying the situation there has reached new depths. In a statement released earlier tonight, the Prime Minister called on Israel to change course and allow in the aid that is desperately needed. Our political correspondent Sarina Barker-Singh is following this breaking news for us this evening and joins us now. Sarina.
Yes, it's been quite a surprise statement. We're outside of the parliamentary term. Of course, we're in recess. It doesn't mean that government policy stops there, but it is quite unusual in that we were not expecting it. And it's quite strong words from Downing Street tonight. They say the suffering and starvation unfolding in Gaza is unspeakable and indefensible. While the situation has been grave for some time, it has reached new depths and continues to worsen. We are witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe. And as you said, mention of this new emergency call with other leaders that we hadn't been aware of. Now, what we do know is that there is a conference discussing Palestinian statehood next week. I understand that it will be talking about a two-state solution rather than potentially Palestinian statehood, but in the statement, Downing Street does address that. They say we are clear that statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people. Now, this is potentially the furthest the government has gone. It doesn't quite call for a Palestinian state, but it's quite strong in terms of language. And the context is that MPs have quietly been simmering behind the scenes, unhappy with where the government has been on this, particularly Labour MPs. I'm told that this could be nearly in the hundreds, or over 100 MPs that are unhappy with this. They've been calling for statehood for quite a long time. You also had Wes Streeting, a senior politician in the cabinet, breaking ranks with the government this week, saying that it could be time to recognise the state of Palestine. So this statement does go pretty far, but I think the context is that there is diplomatic work to be done, but also Number 10 very mindful that Labour MPs will be going back to their constituencies in recess and having to deal with constituents who don't feel that the government is in step with where the public really is.
Sarina, thank you. Sarina Barker-Singh there with the latest on that breaking news. More to come as we get it. Now, tens of thousands of NHS staff in England are expected to walk out this weekend in a dispute with the government over pay and conditions. Resident doctors, who used to be known as junior doctors, are taking strike action from tomorrow, and it will last 5 days. People are still being urged to continue coming forward for care, with senior doctors being asked to provide cover. But there are warnings from NHS leaders that the health service will inevitably be harmed because of these strikes, with Wes Streeting saying the walkouts show a complete disdain for patients. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has this report.
John, we've had the results back from the CT scan and everything's clear.
John is 88. He's an RAF veteran. He was brought here to the Royal Berkshire Hospital after suffering a nasty fall in his garden. It happened just as the hospital was preparing for its resident doctors to go on strike.
I was in the RAF for 30 years and the military were very loyal. We weren't able to strike. We went and did our duties where the Crown sent us.
Do you have any sympathy for resident doctors and the industrial action they're taking?
not everything in life is give me when I want it. They are well-respected people of the community, and by doing this action, my feeling is that they're losing the respect of the community, and that is a terrible thing.
The walkout will have a wide-ranging disruptive impact on NHS services across the country. They come after resident doctors, then known as junior doctors, took part in 11 separate strikes over pay between 2023 and 2024, leading to hundreds of thousands of cancelled appointments.
We know mornings are better, we know that evenings are difficult, we know that nights are really difficult. So it is unpredictable, but we know that next week there'll be 5 days where we have 400 to 500 patients every day, and we'll need to have to find staff to meet that need.
The British Medical Association says resident doctor wages remain around 20% lower in real terms than in 2008 and are demanding pay restoration. The public is being advised to continue coming forward for care while the industrial action is going on.
The last period of industrial action, during that particular period, we cancelled over 500 patients who were coming in for an outpatient consultation, over 50 treatments. This time we're really trying to hold fast in terms of cancelling patients.
The BMA says that approach is in danger of stretching staff too thinly and could put patients at risk.
We need to look at what's happening on non-strike days and non-strike weeks. We have millions of appointments being cancelled because there isn't the staff are burnt out and staff are leaving.
The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, says more pay isn't on the table, but he is willing to discuss other issues around working conditions. For now, patients like John will hope that the impact of these strikes on the NHS won't affect their treatment. Ashish Joshi, Sky News, at the Royal Berkshire Hospital.
Well, let's discuss this now with the latest round of strikes due to start tomorrow morning. We're joined by resident Dr. Rida Khan, and we're also joined by Professor John Ashton, a former North West Regional Medical Officer. Good evening to you both, and thank you so much for coming on to talk about this issue. Dr. Khan, I'll come to you first, if I may. You'll have been listening there to Ashish Joshi's report, and you'll have heard throughout the day and over the course of the last few months, years, for example, you know, when it comes to these strikes, you're being accused of putting patients at risk. How do you answer that ahead of tomorrow morning?
No, I understand the frustration. First of all, I do want to say I do understand the frustration, but I also want to make it clear that we make a noble choice to study medicine and to become doctors. It's never for the money. You know, we put in so many hours into our work, into so many years into our studying, and we choose this profession. And it is out of choice, and it's never for the money. And I know we come across to a lot of people and to the public where they think that we may be just wanting and demanding more money, but we're not demanding more money, we're demanding a full restoration. And that's what we were promised in the beginning, and that's what we're asking for. We want our pay. We've had a 20% erosion from our pay for what it was in 2008 and 2009, and that doesn't match with the inflation that we have now. So it's a restoration that we want. We were given a 5.4% increase. We were heading in the right direction, but the promise always was, and we always wanted, the plan always was for a full restoration of the pay.
Yeah. Are you reading the room correctly? I'm just looking at a YouGov poll, the latest YouGov poll, that says just over half the public now oppose this strike action. The public were on your side. That support seems to be waning. We heard from John, an RAF veteran, in our report just then. He had a nasty fall and went into hospital. He compared your duty to his time in service, and you just called your profession there a noble choice, a choice to go into this profession. You don't do it for the money. You know, when people say that, you haven't got the public support, you know, the government haven't got much money. We know how stretched society is, the economy is. Are you reading the room correctly at this point in time?
You know, when it comes, first of all, we've had a lot of negotiations with the government, and going on to strike was the last resort. For every doctor, patient safety is of utmost importance. And beyond the money, it's the work-life quality that we want. For example, when we have a shortage of doctors on the ward, that affects patient care. And because of the circumstances and what doctors are working in, with the burnout, with the pay, which is not matching what the pay used to be for doctors 15 to 20 years ago. It's causing a brain drain where a lot of our valuable, talented medics are going towards other countries. They're going to, whether it's Australia, whether it's America, Canada, many other countries where they feel that they can get a better life, whether it's in medicine. And some people are also leaving the profession as a whole. So what we think is that patient care is always important, and this is the last resort. We have tried very hard. We've had negotiations with the government, and we did not want to walk out. We did not want that, but we are having to end up having to walk out, and we want to make the conditions better overall. It will help the NHS and to help the patients.
OK, well, let's get a response from Professor John Ashton. I mean, you've been there, you've walked in Dr Khan's shoes before you rose up the ranks in the NHS and the health service. You heard Dr Khan saying there, this is a last resort. What are your thoughts on these strikes, this latest round that starts tomorrow?
Well, I've been a member of the BMA for many years, and I'm still a consultant, a medical consultant, and I'm absolutely shocked and disappointed in the attitude of Dr. Khan. I'm very puzzled about how she juggles being a doctor in training with her media career. I don't understand how that works, really. Medicine is a vocation, and that's what it's all about. I'd be more interested if the BMA was concerned about the problem of people from poorer backgrounds getting into medicine, rather than those who have medical backgrounds themselves or wealthy parents who can support them. I came from a very ordinary background, and I had the benefit of a grant. I think the BMA should be pushing for more support for people from poorer backgrounds. But the real issue is not money. The Nuffield Foundation has this week published a report that shows that actually the pay is only down 5% or so on 2008, and the BMA can't be trusted on this. The real issue now is the terms and conditions of young doctors not being able to know where they're going to work, whether they can be in the same place as their partner, boyfriend, wife, husband, whatever, and the security. And the BMA is pricing out young graduates from the jobs. We've got twice as many doctors coming off the training programs now as we had, but many of them can't be taken on by the NHS because they can't afford it. And the working week is now much shorter than it was in my day, but it seems as though the BMA wants them to be paid as if they were working the hours that I did when we were working 60 or 70 hours a week. So, you can't trust the BMA on this. I'm totally shocked by the BMA, and I'm not surprised that members are leaving the BMA because they feel as though it's been hijacked by people who are behaving like Trotskyists.
OK, well, I'll let Dr Khan respond to that because, Dr Khan did make the point it isn't just about pay, it's about working conditions and training as well. What would you say in response to what Professor John Ashton's just said?
I think in response to what the professor said, obviously he's touched on me balancing. I think it's a quality to be able to balance a media career and medicine. And I like to show that in today's age, there are many talented doctors, whether they're excelling in sports, whether excelling in other activities or excelling in media, and that can be done. And I think that's more of a quality than and it shouldn't be criticised. Whether it comes
how do you find the hours when you've only qualified 18 months ago? You should be concentrating on your training.
I didn't qualify 18 months ago. I've successfully finished the foundation program. I work full-time as a resident doctor. Many of my colleagues work full-time. We work long hours. We work weekends. We work night shifts. We work on call.
Can you give me a day in the life then, Dr Khan? Because obviously you're saying it's not about pay, it's about working conditions. And, Professor Ashton there just said, there are doctors qualifying and they can't find positions, yet we keep hearing that wards are understaffed. Give me a day in the life that will tell our viewers why you are going on strike tomorrow, why the conditions that you work under are so bad.
So, for example, if you're on call as a resident doctor, and if you're just starting out as a resident doctor, your on-call rota will be 8 to 8. So it could be from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. you're on call, and you're looking after the ward. You're on the shop floor. You're on call. You've got the bleep. If there's any crash call, that's your responsibility to attend to the patient. So in order to get to work at 8 a.m., a lot of different doctors will work in different places. They travel. That doesn't include your commute. So they'll be waking waking up early, to make sure that they take public transport, however they commute to work, get to work by 8 a.m., and then they will finish by 8 p.m. Then they may have to hand over a sick patient. So if there is a sick patient, our job doesn't stop at 8 p.m. It will go on till 9, it will go till 9:30 if we have to be there with a sick patient. And then we have to hand over. We need to make sure we give a very safe handover to the doctors that are taking over from the night shift. And there's a whole meeting that takes place. We have to get there. We have to explain everything and make sure we've safely handed over the patient to the night team who will be responsible for that patient. So there's no given time for that. Then we take that time into getting home, being able to switch off from the day so we can go back to work. And for 4 days straight, you will be on call from 8 a.m. to 8
OK, I'll just give Professor John Ashton a chance to come back on that. Does that sound different to your day? I mean, we are living in a time where, you know, there is a cost of living crisis, particularly in cities. Doctors, nurses can't afford to live anywhere near the hospitals they work in. But does Dr. Khan's day sound so different to what you were used to when you were a resident, then junior doctor?
Very different. We used to be on call, living actually resident, as opposed to doing 12 hours and going home for 2 nights on the trot or a whole weekend on the trot and then working Monday. I mean, you know, we used to work 60 or 70 hours and I started on £26 a week. I know that would translate into quite a lot more today, but we thought we would never be able to buy a detached house when we were housemen, as it was in those days. But of course, we all finished up with decent-sized houses. And Dr. Khan is on track for a salary. Consultants now earn between £106,000 and £145,000. Now, tell that to the postman. Tell that to the people who do get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and are working long days and don't have the security of a good state pension of the level that Dr. Khan can look forward to. And she can still manage to fit in hobnobbing with the great and the good and a media life. I think you'd be better off with somebody who's actually vocationally committed.
Well, listen, you know, as Dr. Khan said, many other doctors do other things alongside their career in medicine. Professor John Ashton, really passionate response from you. Dr. Rida Khan, a very passionate response from you to Professor Ashton. Two sides of the debate there explained by our guests tonight. Resident doctors are striking for 5 days from tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for coming on tonight to put across your points of view.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Well, let's head to Essex now, shall we? The number of people arrested following disorder outside a hotel housing asylum seekers has gone up to 16, we understand here at Sky News. Tonight, police have been given extra powers to disperse protesters outside the hotel in Epping. Our national correspondent Tom Parminter is there for us, as he has been for the last few days, monitoring what's going on. Tom, what's happening there this evening?
Good evening. Well, there are 2 locations to the protest tonight. The Bell Hotel here on the edge of Epping, which, as you can see, is probably the most heavily guarded hotel in the country right now, and also the Epping Forest Council building, where a council meeting is going on to discuss the issue of the asylum seekers living here. The massive groundswell of opinion that we've seen expressed in various peaceful protests of the last year or so, but also it is something that has seen a heavily police protection around that council building as well. So a big police presence from all over the country. Officers from Staffordshire, Wales, Norfolk, Sussex and indeed Essex. And we heard from the Chief Constable earlier or yesterday, who was very clear in his words: we will deal very robustly with anyone coming into Epping to cause trouble. But I'll show you around here. We've got the protesters who have walked from the Bell Hotel into Epping. They had an hour or so outside the council meeting and now are back at the Bell Hotel behind these metal fences, which is where the police have asked them to stand. And it has all been very peaceful this evening. It's been pretty orderly as they made their way from here down into town. But they have a burning feeling here, really, that this can't go on, that the government has to take a different course, more robust actions, because their community and many others around the UK are just seeing this fracture, really. People reaching the end of their tethers around immigration. And we heard earlier from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, in the Commons, explaining the progress the government is making.
I think the police do a really important job across our country, keeping communities safe. It's really important, frankly, that people support our police rather than just attacking them continually, as we've seen Reform one day calling for chief constables to resign, the next day attacking women police officers who are out on our streets every single day of the week.
So the protest continuing here tonight, but the police have probably more officers here than there are actually protesters. So one further arrest we know of having been made this evening, but as I say, it is largely peaceful. It has been orderly, and lots of people here determined to make their point that in their view and in the council's view, that's what they're debating this evening down in Epping at the council building, that this town cannot continue with this asylum seeker hotel here. It's a sentiment shared by many people. There are disagreements as to the tactics being used, but tonight, from what we've seen, largely peaceful, and a lot of people still determined to make their point.
Tom, thank you. Tom Parmenter in Epping for us tonight. Meanwhile, the head of the Police Federation has warned that officers are not ready for a summer of unrest should protests spread. I'm joined now to talk about this by David McKelvey, former Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police Service. Thank you so much for coming on to the programme tonight. First of all, your thoughts on what's been unfolding in Epping over the last few days?
I mean, I live very, very close to the Bell Hotel, and I saw the first evening's disorder. I mean, there's a lot of narrative being spread, you know, about protests, etc. But the majority, vast majority of people who were at that protest, and I drove through it at the time on the way to Epping, were peaceful demonstrators, local people, some of whom I knew. They were not aggressive people. The trouble started when the people from Antifa were escorted up from the station to the Bell Hotel, and that just basically caused the trouble that then erupted. Yeah,
Community concerns about what goes on in their area are legitimate, and peaceful protests are allowed and should be allowed. In terms of those hijacking protests, we've seen this before. You go back to last summer in Southport. I was there. We know what unfolded. And after last summer, we were told that the country was prepared or should be prepared should that happen again. Are we?
No. No. I mean, you know, a report that's just been published, you know, states that that we aren't prepared. The police are not prepared. And the reality is that, you know, you only have to see what's going on in policing at the moment. Policing is in crisis. You know, you look at the Met are about to lose, as Mr. Rowley says, 3,400 officers. You've got 11.5% of the officers in the Met who are on adjusted duties, which is restricted duties. That means they can't go on the front line. You've got officers sick. You've got officers who basically morale is through the floor, recruitment's, you know, through the floor, retention is through the floor. So you've got a crisis in policing, and if something were to happen this summer, you know, it could be devastating.
Yeah. How concerning is that for the public? Because when we spoke to Tom Parmenter, our correspondent who's in Epping tonight, he was just naming all the police forces that were there, that were represented by their officers in Epping at this hotel to deter any scenes of violence or disruption. Just talk to me about the knock-on impact that has for policing in the areas that these officers have come from.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the government is talking about local policing, but if you haven't got the numbers of police officers to carry out that local policing, it's a nonsense. You know, Mr. Starmer, the Prime Minister, was talking about, you know, 10,000 officers, public order trained officers after Southport. That didn't happen. It's not happened. And so you're...
Is that because people don't want to become police officers, or is that because there isn't the money for recruitment and training? What's happened there?
No, you've got, you know, you have a crisis in policing. You've got, you know, morale is through the floor. They're losing officers. You just look at that figure of 11.5%. That's nearly 4,000 officers who are not on the front line of policing. How do you do local policing when you haven't got the officers to do that? And furthermore, they've just announced that they're going to put 1,800 officers from specialist posts back onto borough. So at the top end, those dealing with guns, drugs, organised crime, you're taking those officers away and putting them back on borough, which will then leave this chasm of nobody to deal with the most serious crimes, which again then impacts down below because drugs it causes shoplifting, thefts, car crime, all sorts, and so it's a real problem.
David McKelvey, we really appreciate your time tonight and your thoughts on this issue. Former Detective Chief Inspector there in the Metropolitan Police Service. In other news tonight, a school friend of the British teenager Jay Slater, who died while on holiday in Tenerife, has told an inquest that he didn't seem distressed in the hours before he disappeared. The 19-year-old from Lancashire went missing after attending a music festival on the island in June last year, triggering a huge search operation. Sky's Katerina Vitozzi has this update.
This is Preston Coroner's Court, and today an inquest here heard from the friends of Jay Slater, the last people to see and speak to him before the 19-year-old went missing in Tenerife on his first ever holiday without his family in June last year. The court heard from Bradley Gogan. This was Jay's friend from school. They'd travelled out to Tenerife together, and he described their holiday up to the point of Mr. Slater's disappearance as one of drinking, dancing, raving, and he admitted drug taking. He said that on the night that they had been out before Mr. Slater disappeared, that Jay had gone a bit too far. In fact, he had been thrown out of the club that they'd been in together because he was too drunk. And although the group had separated at times, they then found each other. He said that Mr. Slater was coherent but appeared quite giddy. Mr. Gogan said that he and the other group of friends that they were with decided they wanted to go back to their accommodation at around 5 a.m, but Mr. Slater had said he'd wanted to stay out. He said that he was going back to the Airbnb of two men, friends that they had met and made earlier on in that holiday. Now, one of those men, Ayub Kasim, also spoke to the inquest. He said that Mr. Slater had got a ride in the back of his car to that Airbnb where Mr. Kasim was staying with a friend. He assumed that Mr. Slater thought that they were going to go on and carry the party there, but he said that he had simply wanted to go to bed, which he did. He said he'd given Mr. Slater a blanket, a towel, and said good night. He said about an hour later, so at around 6:30 a.m, he was woken up. Mr. Slater said he wanted to leave and that he was going to get a bus to go home, back to his accommodation, and then he left the flat where they were staying. Now, a few hours after that, Mr. Slater's friends, looking at phone data and also according to their testimony, they said that Mr. Slater contacted them to say that he was lost in the mountains. He spoke to a friend also on the trip, Lucy Law, who says that she spoke to Mr. Slater, who said that he needed a drink, that he was lost in the mountains, and that his phone was running out of battery. And whilst he was on a call to her, that phone did indeed cut out. The court also heard about a watch. Now, when this disappearance happened last year, there was speculation about whether Mr. Slater had been involved in stealing a watch. There'd been speculation about messages again sent on Snapchat. However, Mr. Kasim said he was 100% certain that Mr. Slater hadn't stolen a watch, and that if he had bragged to his friends that he'd done so online, then he said he believed it was just some sort of exaggeration. In an earlier evidence given to this inquest here, the medical evidence showed that Mr. Slater died from a head injury, which was consistent with a steep fall. There was alcohol, cocaine and ecstasy found in his system. His body was found a few weeks after he disappeared at the bottom of a steep ravine. And there is no suggestion that there had been any struggle or injuries obtained through any sort of fight. The inquest here continues tomorrow, expecting the coroner to be summing up his conclusions.
So to come on the UK tonight, we'll hear from the parents of 11-year-old Kyra Hill, who drowned at a water park as they call for tighter safety regulations across the industry. The parents of an 11-year-old girl who drowned at a water park are campaigning for tighter safety regulations in the industry. Kyra Hill died at Liquid Leisure near Windsor in 2022. She was found almost 2 hours after going missing, with lifeguards only qualified to perform surface rescues, not underwater ones. A coroner ruled Kyra was unlawfully killed following gross breaches in health and safety. Now her parents have started a petition calling on the government to overhaul water park safety regulations. Earlier, I sat down with Kyra's mum and dad, Heather and Leonard, and I started by asking them how things have been since the inquest's conclusion.
You get the verdict of unlawful killing, and then you have like the questions of, okay, what next? What comes of the verdict, And in reality, nothing does. It's down to yourselves to fight and put things to people, to the government for changes.
Leonard, I think that is something that's always difficult for families to deal with after an inquest, in terms of criminal proceedings cannot come from an inquest, but you have something to work with, and it almost feels like it falls on your shoulders to do something about the verdict of an inquest. So what is it that you and Heather and your wider family have decided to do in Kyra's name?
Well, currently, We have a petition. We have a petition on Parliament website to encourage the government to enforce change to regulations and safety around aqua parks and water parks. We're just tougher sanctions on owners, and just in reality, it's just to keep our children safe. So lifeguards that are trained to save people that are submerged underwater, as opposed to lifeguards that can only do surface rescue. We've just been working on getting those changes implemented, and it really is hard to get that done. But we're fighting and just trying every avenue we can try to get those changes put in place so that our children can be safe. We don't want them to go to we don't want them to not have these places to go to. Like, children like to swim, children like to have fun, but we wouldn't like the idea of our children going out to have fun. And me and Heather have learned the hard way that our daughter has gone out to have fun, and has ended up being submerged underwater, and there was at no time was she able to be rescued.
Yeah. Heather, that must have been the hardest part of the inquest. After losing Kyra, of course, just hearing it all laid out, bare facts of the missed opportunities, the lack of emergency plans, the lack of safety regulation that could have saved Kyra. You believe that emergency plans, CCTV operatives at these kind of water parks, and as Leonard said, lifeguards trained for underwater should be mandatory and strictly enforced at water parks. Because as parents, of course, after you've dealt with what's happened to your daughter, the shock of sitting there at that inquest and hearing that none of this was in place, it was hard for those listening to what was happening to get their head around. So it must have been unfathomable for you and your family.
It's shocking, because you feel like what we're asking for is basic
requirements,
things, or basic things that you would do. If you saw someone, going under, and that you've got a CCTV room, naturally, and there was confusion at some point, naturally you would go, let's look at CCTV.
And a long time.
That was
a long period of time passed, didn't it, before that was actually...
An hour and 41 minutes.
Before they decided to review CCTV footage.
And then it took 9 minutes. Once the diver had found the location that was told, it was checked on CCTV. Once he had told the location of Kyra, it took 9 minutes. So the hour and 41 minutes beforehand was wasted.
It's about raising awareness as well. I know, having talked to you before and having covered Kyra's story, whenever I see an aqua theme park, I always think about Kyra. But it shouldn't be up to parents to ask those questions, should it? To ask those difficult questions of water parks, as, what safety measures do you have in place?
No.
It should come as standard, because, this is meant to be fun, right? And like you said, you don't want to see these places clamped down on. But what parents can do is sign your petition, Heather. Yeah. Make their voices heard to keep their kids safe.
Yeah, to sign it, to get the laws in place. So when you are taking your kids out, you're reassured, You're reassured that, this has to be put in place. You're more confident when you're taking your children to these places. Because, it's law, they have to abide by the laws. This is in place. If anything does happen, they will have emergency plans in place. The staff will be trained to save your child.
Safety should be a top priority.
Yeah, definitely.
I know that you're both carrying Kyra with you today. I can see that you carry her on chains around your neck, and, talking to you about her before and reading about her. She was a budding footballer and wanted a career in law as well. And you guys are taking on the lawmakers in her name. How do you think of her? As I said, you carry her with you every day. How do you think about her today?
You always think about Kyra in the most beautiful ways, but the thoughts are now clouded with her death. The thoughts are now clouded with her death. Although there's trigger points where you remember a lot of happy moments, but you always go back to the sinking feeling that Kyra is dead. You always go back to the sinking feeling that she's not here anymore. You know, you still see stuff and think, oh yeah, Kyra would have loved that. Kyra would have loved that. You could hear her laugh, but so the underlying factor is that she's just not here. She's not here anymore. She's gone. She's gone, and that hurts. So that's the main feeling, and to have that feeling as a parent and you don't get to say goodbye, it's sickening. It's sickening, and it's really tough. So when you hear us say we don't want any parent to go through this ever again, it's not just a saying. It's a true heartfelt feeling, because it turns your whole life, takes your whole life and just shreds it. And now you've got to go back in the shredder and try and piece it all back together.
Well, we reached out to Liquid Leisure Water Park for a response to this story, but they have not got back to us. Coming up on the UK Tonight. Speaking ahead of the Euros final, the FA chief tells us that the FA could boycott social media over racism after comments made to England star Jess Carter. Plus, Alexander Isak wants to explore his options for a move away from Newcastle this summer. We have sports news on the way next.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we are to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
Swedish media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back. David is here with the sport, and we're talking about Alexander Isak, who says he wants to explore his options for a move away from Newcastle this summer after missing their pre-season tour of Asia. Of course, he didn't travel with them, which is always an indicator something is up in a transfer window. And this is the last thing Newcastle supporters will want to hear, although they'll have seen it coming, right?
Well, they would have seen it coming to an extent, although the noises previously coming out of Newcastle is he's not for sale, he's very happy. But people tend to say that, don't they? I mean, if you think about it, Newcastle...
Well, he has 3 years left on his contract.
Well, he's got years left on his contract. It's going to still cost a lot of money to get him out of there, I would imagine. But you think Newcastle fans, they've won their first tournament in 70 years, winning the Carabao Cup. They qualified for the Champions League. They've just signed Anthony Elanga. They're thinking, let's build, let's get bigger, let's get stronger. We're going to need a big squad to compete, and he is their superstar. So if they do lose him, and Liverpool are the team that are interested, and that's the thing, isn't it? There's always a bigger fish swimming around in the pond, and Liverpool, they don't come much bigger, Premier League champions, and will always be a force in Europe. So yeah, you'd imagine 150 million, something like that. Liverpool have been really busy in the transfer market, but it looks like he might be on his way.
So when he says he's exploring his options, is it option? Is it only Liverpool?
Well, he says options, but we know that Liverpool are interested, and that would be a bigger move for him, I guess. And they obviously Newcastle are looking at their options too. Should he go? Johan Wissa is one. Benjamin Sesko, who's been coveted by the likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United in the past, is another. The RB Leipzig player. So, you know, they will be busy. Johan Wissa, Brentford, is a good player, but he's probably not quite Alexander Isak. So, yeah, this story will rumble on, I think.
Yeah, Newcastle hoping he'll stay, but who knows, as you said, exploring his options.
Exploring his options, yeah. So that is Newcastle. Better news for England cricket fans.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
With weeks to go before the English football season starts, Sky Sports News were given exclusive access to the PGMO's referee pre-season camp.
The highs are really high, the lows are not so good, you know when you've made a mistake.
Premier League's always evolving, it's faster, it's quicker, players are hitting ridiculously top speeds, we've got to match that.
We got to know the people behind the whistle and what it takes physically and mentally to officiate at the top.
When I finished refereeing, the scrutiny wasn't the same, but it took a different form, really.
Probably the biggest thing that's changing about the game is the pure speed of it.
We spent 2 days in Alicante learning how referees, assistant refs and VAR refs are getting ready for the season.
At times it seems almost like chaos. What's it like being in there? What's it like actually doing the job?
Yeah, it's quite sort of opposite to what you've said, really. In some respects, quite a calm environment.
Day 1, and a light session to begin.
There'll be a mixture of physical, which mainly is going to be for the whole week. We'll do a couple of technical sessions where we'll look at intricates in regards to tactical elements and expectations of the season ahead for the referees. But mainly on the pitches, it's going to be the physical. One of the biggest things that we'll do at this time over the course of this week is one-to-ones with each referee and individual to actually see how they are, how do they feel, how they preparing themselves, and again mentally getting them in the right place, in the right shape, ready for the rest of pre-season, the season to start, because that's massively important as well as physical side of things.
How was the morning? Yeah, good. First morning, straight into it, easing us into it, ramping up, I'm sure, over the week. Every session we do at home and obviously here is analysed, covers our total volume, high intensity.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
The head of the Football Association has told Sky News his organisation would consider boycotting social media. This is after racial abuse was directed at England star Jess Carter. Mark Bullingham was speaking to our sports correspondent Rob Harris ahead of the final between England and Spain this weekend. We can join Rob, who is in Zurich for us this evening. And Rob, tell me more about this conversation you had.
Well, I really got a sense of the frustration from Mark Bullingham that the social media firms haven't engaged with them since Jess Parter went so public at the weekend with the racist abuse that she'd faced. You know, perhaps we might be surprised in the media. We've been asking Instagram and X what they're going to do about it, and they've said nothing here on the 5th day since we started asking them questions, which will, of course, raise into question how seriously they are taking this social media abuse. In fact, the head of Instagram today posting on his own platform about plank challenges in the office. I've asked him for comment. But England are trying to focus, obviously, on this final on Sunday and defending the European title in a rematch of the World Cup final from 2 years ago when they lost to Spain. But I've been reflecting with Mark Bullingham just what a period of unprecedented success it has been for the Lionesses, reaching 3 finals. For England teams overall, including the men's, 5 finals. The under-21 men's recently winning their European title again. So how special a time is this for English football? That's how I began asking the FA's Chief Executive, Mark Bullingham.
It's an incredibly special moment for English football. We see the excitement amongst fans, and it pulls the country together in a way very few other things can. So incredibly exciting. We don't take it for granted to make these finals, and we want to enjoy every moment.
And how special has Serena been to all this?
I think Serena's an incredibly special coach, and I think we've got an incredibly special group of players as well. But if you're talking about her record, it's unprecedented in any other part of football. For a coach to make 5 finals in the 5 tournaments they've coached in is incredible.
How do you find it when people ask you, well, should you be coaching the England men's team, coaching in the men's game?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit disrespectful for the Lionesses to assume that the England men's job is more senior than the women's. That's not the way we view it. Our organisation, we view them as equal. I think, of course, she's talented enough to do any job in world football, but we're very, very happy with the fact she's with us, and she's with us through till at least 2027.
How difficult a conversation was it when you heard from Jess Carter about the racist abuse she's faced during this tournament?
It's difficult in that you're angry that in this day and age that's still happening, and obviously our view is that social media companies need to do more. They need to prevent this happening. They need to find ways to take it down quicker, and then they need to work with us and the authorities to make sure that we're prosecuting people for what are effectively hate crimes.
I've asked X and Meta for comment. They've not got back to me now for days. Have you had any response from any social media firms?
No, we haven't, and I think our general perspective is that those companies have really avoided the responsibility for this over the last few years that they should be taking.
Would you consider a social media boycott as the FA?
Yeah, we'd absolutely consider anything that we felt would help. I think what is more likely at the moment to drive change is personal fines, corporate fines that will really start to make these companies take action in the right place.
Do you feel that society is taking misogyny seriously enough? Even in this tournament, there are still people posting, obviously, very offensive comments about women's football.
I think you've seen that around the women's game for a number of years. I think as the women's game grows in popularity, some people might expect that to still be there. I personally would expect society to move on and people to accept these brilliant athletes for what they are, and we've seen some fantastic high-quality football matches, so it's never excusable and it's completely baseless.
Rob, when we talk about a social media boycott, and, you know, he was agreeing that that may be an option, what would that actually look like and what kind of difference would it make?
Well, perhaps we felt this might be the case after Elon Musk take over X and there was concerns about a proliferation of racism and abuse on the platform at times. Some in sport did choose to leave X. Some media companies have as well. A big decision for football. Obviously, it's a way of engaging with the fans, and also, even as media reporting this story on X, it exposes users to some of the concerns about the platform itself. Instagram, there are concerns particularly about direct messaging that can go straight to the players and just what filters you put in place. But the onus really is, it does seem now, on Ofcom as the media regulator. Lisa Nandy, the culture secretary, telling me earlier this week that if these posts aren't being removed quickly, well, they should use their new powers to fine the social media companies. And these new powers are now in place coming through this year with the Online Safety Act coming into effect. So now there are powers to be able to compel action from the social media companies, but there doesn't seem to be any response and no sense of urgency at all. And so many are saying, actually, they've rolled back some of the protections that were in place, which is very troubling, particularly for those in football in the public spotlight.
Yeah, it's really not something we want to be talking about in the build-up to Sunday's final. how the Lionesses preparing? Of course, there's a couple of days to go. What's the atmosphere like? What are they up to at the moment?
Well, they have managed to have an extra day's rest than Spain because, of course, they played on Tuesday night, whereas here in Zurich, Spain had that encounter all the way through into extra time against Germany. Now, it is another rematch with Spain. There was that sense in Sydney when I was there 2 years ago that England were played off the pitch completely. They're really outclassed. Now, hearing from Kira Walsh today, who's actually spent 3 years at Barcelona until recently, she believes that wasn't the England that they can be, and the fact that they can keep the ball better and maybe be more certain, more confident in the match on Sunday. There has been a lot of focus on England's late dramas, having to scramble equalisers in both in the quarter-final against Sweden and that semi-final against Italy to rescue things and take it into extra time. She says it's not some chaos, it's actually all planned. They know they've got time, these crosses that come in to try to produce those goals. It's all part of the tactical master plan of Sarina Wiegman, and hearing there from Mark Bullingham just how appreciative they are to have her. And what an incredible moment. She's led teams into 5 international tournament finals. No coach in history of football has done that. She did it twice for the Netherlands at Euros and World Cups, first of all. Now, obviously, 2 Euros finals and the World Cup with England. She is enjoying an unprecedented run in the game. But, of course, some have questioned, should she make those substitutions earlier? Should they have to leave it so late for the likes of Chloe Kelly and Michelle Adjeman to come on? Or would bring them on earlier perhaps make a bigger difference and not lead to some of those anxious and nervy moments that so many fans have had to go through with those late comebacks? But it's all been part of the drama with so many times this tournament. Many thinking the Lionesses wouldn't even have made it through to the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, let alone the finals. So now preparing to face Spain to defend their European title.
Yeah, and part of me loves the drama, but also, not sure if I really want to see it on Sunday. And when you've watched the tournament, England has been all about that last-minute drama, getting them through to this final. Spain, at times, look like they're playing on another planet. They've been so good. I'm going to put you on the spot, Rob, because we do like to record these things and play them back after the event. What's your score prediction for Sunday?
And Tanner Bonmatthews had made a real difference in extra time. Maybe this is England's moment. They've won 1, lost 1 to Spain this year, so they're not completely fair in them. So they've kept on coming back from the dead in this tournament. Have they got it in them again on Sunday? It's been the whole story and narrative of this journey in Switzerland.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Rob, thank you. It wasn't really a sort of prediction, but I sort of get where you're going with that. Rob, thank you so much. What's that, sorry?
Don't want to jinx things.
Don't want to jinx things. Oh, all right then, Rob, I'll let you off. OK, Rob Harris, they're out in Zurich for us. The diplomat's answer there, but of course he's got to remain impartial. Looking forward to that final on Sunday. I'll be watching it with my dad, who I think is the Lionesses' biggest fan. He's watched every game of this tournament. I've had to listen to it on the radio because, of course, I'm travelling home after the show, but I'll be watching it on Sunday, as I'm sure you will be too. That's all from the UK tonight. We'll be back on Monday night at 8, and the Lionesses may have won. Gals is next.